The riverside heat was brutal that April afternoon, making even the simple act of standing in line feel like torture. I'd been craving vanilla ice cream all week, and Moonbeam Creamery was the only place in town that still made it from scratch. At 50, I figured I'd earned the right to indulge my sweet tooth without guilt. "One vanilla cone, please," I told the teenage clerk, already reaching for my wallet. That's when the blonde tornado hit me. "Oh damn, I'm so sorry." The woman behind me had somehow managed to collide with my shoulder, sending her strawberry ice cream flying directly onto my vintage cream blouse, the one I'd bought at that estate sale last month. "Great," I muttered, looking down at the pink mess spreading across the silk. "Please, let me pay for dry cleaning." Her voice carried genuine distress, not the fake politeness most people offered. I'm usually more coordinated than this, I swear. I looked up into warm brown eyes that seemed to sparkle with both embarrassment and humor. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s, with golden hair pulled back in a messy bun and paint smudges on her fingers. "It's just a shirt," I said, though we both knew it wasn't. "It's a beautiful shirt that I just destroyed with frozen dairy products." She grabbed napkins from the dispenser, dabbing at the stain with surprising gentleness. "I'm Ava, by the way. Ava Bennett. Charlotte Foster." "The voice actress?" Her eyes lit up with recognition. "I've heard your commercials on the radio. You have the most incredible voice." Heat crept up my neck that had nothing to do with the weather. After getting my replacement cone and her getting a fresh strawberry, we found ourselves on the bench outside the shop. The afternoon crowd bustled past us, but somehow the chaos felt distant. "So, what kind of paint?" I asked, nodding toward her stained fingers. "Restoration work. I run an antique shop downtown." She licked her ice cream thoughtfully. "Spent the morning touching up a 1,920 seconds vanity. The previous owner had painted it some awful shade of orange." "Criminal," I said, making her laugh. "Right? Some things should never be changed." Her gaze lingered on my face. "Though I suppose everything evolves eventually." The comment felt loaded with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. We talked about her business, my voice work, the ridiculous heat wave. She was easy to talk to, the kind of person who listened with her whole body, leaning forward when I spoke about the audiobook I was recording. "I should go," I finally said, though I didn't want to. Studio time waits for no one. "Of course." She stood with me, hesitating for a moment. "Charlotte?" "Yes?" Before I could react, she leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to my cheek. Her lips were cool from the ice cream, her perfume light and floral. "Thank you for not throwing your cone at me," she whispered near my ear. I watched her walk away, one hand pressed to where her lips had touched my skin. Something had shifted in that simple moment, though I couldn't name what. The stain on my blouse would come out eventually. The memory of her kiss, I suspected, would prove more permanent. 3 days later, I stood outside Bennett Antiques, clutching a coffee like a lifeline. The ice cream incident had left more than just a stain on my blouse. It had left me thinking about warm brown eyes and easy laughter at the most inconvenient moments. I needed a vintage microphone for my home studio. That was my story, and I was sticking to it. The shop bell chimed as I entered, and the scent of old wood and lemon oil enveloped me. Ava looked up from behind an ornate Victorian desk, her face breaking into that same genuine smile. "Charlotte, what brings you to my little treasure trove?" "I'm looking for a vintage microphone. Something from the 50s, maybe 60s. I tried to sound professional, businesslike. For my home recording setup." "Ah, a purist." She stood, smoothing down a sundress that hugged her curves in ways I definitely shouldn't be noticing. "I might have exactly what you need." She led me to a glass case filled with old electronics. Her enthusiasm was infectious as she explained the history of each piece, her fingers dancing over the items with obvious affection. "This one's a 1952 RCA 44BX, she said, lifting out a gleaming chrome microphone. "Used in radio stations across the country. The sound quality is still incredible." I watched her handle the equipment with expertise that surprised me. This wasn't just someone playing shopkeeper, she knew her stuff. Can I test it? Of course. I have a small setup in the back. The microphone's sound was pristine, rich and warm, in ways modern equipment often missed. As I spoke into it, testing levels, I caught Ava watching me with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. "Your voice really is remarkable," she said quietly. "It's like honey and smoke mixed together." "That's the most poetic description I've ever gotten," I admitted, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. "I'll take it," I said, though the price made me wince slightly. "Tell you what," Ava said, leaning against the counter. "I know a guy who deals in vintage recording equipment. If you're serious about collecting, I could help you find some real gems. Maybe we could discuss it over coffee sometime?" The invitation hung in the air between us. I should have said no. Should have taken my microphone and left. Instead, I heard myself saying, "I'd like that." We met the next afternoon at a small cafe downtown. What started as business quickly became personal. She told me about inheriting the shop from her aunt, about her passion for preserving history. I found myself sharing stories about my career, the challenges of voice acting, the loneliness of spending so much time in soundproof booths. "You know what I love about your voice?" she asked, stirring sugar into her latte. "What?" "It's honest. Most people hide behind their words, but you can't. Every emotion comes through crystal clear." Our coffee meetings became a regular thing. Twice a week, sometimes 3 times, always under the pretense of discussing antiques or equipment, though we rarely talked business anymore. 2 weeks later, she brought a stack of demo recordings to my house. "I thought you might want a fresh perspective," she said, settling onto my couch with the familiarity of someone who belonged there. As my voice filled the room through the speakers, Ava closed her eyes and listened with complete attention. When the recording ended, she was quiet for a long moment. "The third one needs more vulnerability," she said finally. "You're holding back, protecting yourself." But the character wouldn't do that. She was right. Completely, devastatingly right. No one had ever given me feedback that cut so close to the truth. "Play it again," I said, sitting beside her on the couch. This time, as my recorded voice spoke about love and loss, I watched Ava's face, the way her lips parted slightly, the way her breathing changed. When she turned to look at me, something had shifted between us, electric and undeniable. "Charlotte," she whispered. The space between us seemed to shrink without either of us moving. The estate sale was Ava's idea. Saturday morning, she picked me up in her vintage Ford truck, coffee cups steaming in the holders and classic rock playing softly on the radio. "Trust me," she said, backing out of my driveway. "The Morrison estate is legendary. 3 generations of collectors, and now everything must go." The Victorian house sprawled across 2 acres, its wraparound porch already crowded with bargain hunters. Ava moved through the rooms like a bloodhound, her trained eye spotting treasures others missed. "Look at this," she breathed, running her fingers over an Art Deco lamp. "The metalwork is exquisite." I watched her touch the piece with reverence, the same way she'd handled that microphone. There was something sensual about her appreciation for beautiful things, the way she understood craftsmanship and history. "Tell me about your first relationship," she said suddenly, examining a set of china. The question caught me off guard. "Marriage, you mean?" "David was conventional, safe. We divorced amicably after 15 years. "No passion?" I thought passion was overrated. I picked up a silver frame, studying the intricate engravings. "What about you?" "A few girlfriends over the years. Nothing that lasted." She paused, meeting my eyes. "I'm still looking for someone who gets me, you know? Someone who sees the world the way I do." The word girlfriends hit me like a physical force. Of course. It explained so much about the way she looked at me, the careful attention, the gentle flirting I'd been too naive to recognize. We spent the day hunting through rooms filled with memories. She bought the lamp and a vintage jewelry box. I found a collection of poetry books that spoke to something deep inside me. "Emily Dickinson," Ava noted, reading over my shoulder. She understood longing better than anyone. I've always loved her work. The way she captured complex emotions in simple words. Like you do with your voice. The comparison made my heart race. No one had ever connected my work to poetry before. Evening rain caught us at my house. I invited her in for wine, telling myself it was just politeness. We sat on my couch, music playing softly in the background, talking about art and beauty and the things that made life worth living. "Charlotte," she said, setting down her glass. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Have you ever been attracted to a woman?" The question hung between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. The honest answer was that I'd never allowed myself to consider it. But lately, watching Ava move through the world with such confidence and grace, I'd been wondering. "I don't know," I whispered. "That's okay." She moved closer, her hand finding mine. "There's no timeline for understanding yourself." Her fingers were warm, calloused from her restoration work, strong and gentle at the same time. "Ava, I'm not sure I know how to do this." "Do what?" "Whatever this is between us." She smiled, that radiant expression that had captivated me from the first day. "We don't have to define it. We can just let it be." The rain drummed against the windows as she leaned closer. I could smell her perfume, could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. "Is this okay?" she asked, her lips inches from mine. Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us. Her kiss was soft at first, tentative. Then I responded, my hand finding the back of her neck, and she deepened it with a hunger that surprised us both. She tasted like wine and possibility, like everything I'd been missing without knowing it. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against mine. "Well," she said, her voice husky, "that answers that question." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. "I guess it does." Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the world clean for whatever came next. Monday morning brought panic with the sunrise. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, touching my lips where Ava had kissed me. 50 years old, and I was just figuring out who I was? The thought terrified me. I spent the day in my recording booth, throwing myself into work. But every commercial script felt hollow, every narration lifeless. When Ava texted asking how I was, I didn't respond. By Wednesday, she was at my door. "You're avoiding me," she said, when I reluctantly let her in. "I'm processing." "Bullshit." She crossed her arms, looking more hurt than angry. "You kissed me back, Charlotte. Don't pretend it meant nothing." "It's complicated." I moved to the kitchen, needing distance. I'm 50 years old. I've lived my entire life thinking I knew who I was. "So you're scared?" "Terrified," I admitted. "What will people think? My clients, my neighbors, everyone who knows me as this respectable middle-aged woman?" "Screw what they think." Ava followed me, her voice gentle but firm. "You can't live your life based on other people's expectations. Easy for you to say, you've always known who you are." "Have I?" She laughed bitterly. "I spent my 20s dating men I didn't really want, trying to fit into boxes that felt wrong. It took courage to embrace who I really am." Over the next few days, she didn't give up. Small gifts appeared at my studio. Coffee from that cafe we'd visited. A vintage poetry book. A single white rose. Each came with a simple note, "Thinking of you," or "Hope you're well." The persistence was both infuriating and touching. Saturday evening, I found her waiting by my car in the studio parking lot. "We need to talk," I said. "Yes, we do." I drove to her apartment in tense silence. It was a converted loft above her shop, filled with carefully restored furniture and warm lighting. Everything about it felt like her. Authentic, beautiful, unafraid. "Want some wine?" she asked. "I want to understand why you won't leave this alone." She turned to face me, her brown eyes serious. "Because I see something in you that you're too scared to see in yourself." "Which is?" "A woman who's tired of playing it safe, who wants something real for the first time in her life." The words hit too close to home. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? She stepped closer. You light up when we're together. You laugh more, you take risks, you let yourself feel things. That's not friendship, Charlotte. Maybe it's just novelty. Bullshit. Her voice rose slightly. Stop hiding behind excuses. I'm not hiding. Then what are you doing? The question hung between us, loaded with frustration and hurt. I could see the pain in her eyes, the way my rejection was affecting her. I'm trying to protect us both, I said quietly. From what? From the mess this could become. From me not being what you need. She moved closer, her hand reaching for my face. Let me decide what I need. When her lips found mine this time, there was nothing gentle about it. This was hunger and desperation, weeks of tension finally breaking free. I kissed her back with equal fervor, my hands tangling in her hair. She led me to her bedroom, moonlight streaming through tall windows. What happened next was tender and passionate, two women discovering each other with reverent touches and whispered encouragements. She showed me parts of myself I'd never known existed, and I gave her everything I had in return. Afterward, lying in her arms, I felt both complete and terrified. This changes everything, I whispered against her shoulder. Good, she murmured, pressing a kiss to my forehead. It was time for a change. But even as I held her close, part of me was already planning my retreat. Tuesday morning, my phone rang during breakfast. Dr. Martinez's voice was carefully neutral, the tone medical professionals use when delivering news that will shatter your world. Charlotte, I need you to come in today. The blood work from your annual physical shows some irregularities. My coffee mug hit the counter harder than intended. What kind of irregularities? We need to run more tests. Can you be here at 2? The hours crawled by like wounded animals. I sat in the sterile waiting room, watching other patients, and wondering what private hells they were navigating. When Dr. Martinez finally called me into her office, her expression confirmed my worst fears. The CA 125 levels are elevated, she said, spreading test results across her desk. Combined with the ultrasound findings, we're looking at possible ovarian cancer. The words hit me like a physical blow. Cancer. At 50, just when I'd finally found something worth living for. How possible? I managed. We need a biopsy to confirm, but I want you to prepare for that likelihood. Her voice was gentle but firm. The good news is, we caught it early. Treatment options are promising. I drove home in a daze, the familiar streets of Riverside looking foreign and threatening. Everything I'd worried about with Ava seemed trivial now. What did societal expectations matter when you might not have time to worry about them? But that realization brought a different kind of terror. I couldn't drag her into this mess. She was 32, full of life and dreams. She deserved someone who could give her a future, not someone facing an uncertain medical battle. I avoided her calls that evening, and the next day. By Thursday, she was pounding on my door. Charlotte, what the hell is going on? We need to end this, I said, without letting her inside. End what? Us? Her face went pale. Why? Because it was a mistake. A middle-aged crisis or something. I'm sorry. You're lying. She pushed past me into the house. Something happened. Tell me what? Nothing happened. I just realized this isn't what I want. Look me in the eye and say that. I couldn't. Instead, I turned away, wrapping my arms around myself. Please just go, Ava. Fine. Her voice was thick with hurt. But when you're ready to stop running, you know where to find me. The door slammed behind her, and I collapsed onto my couch, finally letting the tears come. 3 days later, I was scheduled for the biopsy. I sat in the hospital gown, trying to focus on breathing, when someone knocked on the door. Come in. It was my friend Janet from the radio station, holding a cup of terrible hospital coffee and looking concerned. Heard you were here, she said. Thought you might want company. How did you know? Ava called me. She was worried sick when you wouldn't answer your phone. My heart clenched. She called you? Practically begging me to check on you. Said you'd been acting strange and she was afraid something was wrong. Janet sat in the uncomfortable visitor's chair. She cares about you, Charlotte. Whatever this is, she wants to help. I can't ask her to go through this with me. Shouldn't that be her choice? Before I could answer, another knock interrupted us. The door opened, and there was Ava, clutching a small bouquet of white roses and looking like she'd been crying. I'm sorry, she said to Janet. I know you said you'd handle this, but I couldn't stay away. She looked at me in the hospital gown, taking in the IV line and medical equipment, and her face crumpled with understanding. Oh, Charlotte, why didn't you tell me? I started crying again, all my carefully constructed walls crumbling. She was beside me in an instant, wrapping me in her arms despite the awkward hospital bed. I was trying to protect you, I sobbed into her shoulder. From what? From loving you? From being here when you need me most? She pulled back to look at me. Don't you dare try to go through this alone. But what if? No what ifs, she said firmly. We face this together, whatever it is. The biopsy confirmed what we already knew. Stage 1 ovarian cancer, caught early but requiring aggressive treatment. Dr. Martinez outlined the battle plan, surgery, chemotherapy, and months of uncertainty. Ava didn't hesitate. The day I was discharged, she showed up with an overnight bag and groceries. I'm staying, she announced, unpacking items in my kitchen with determined efficiency. You don't have to do this. I know. She turned to face me, her brown eyes fierce with resolve. I want to. The first week was the hardest. Post-surgical pain combined with the crushing weight of my diagnosis left me fragile and scared. Ava learned to cook my favorite foods, researched nutrition for cancer patients, and organized my medications with the precision of a pharmacist. Take the anti-nausea pill first, she'd say, handing me water, then the pain medication. Food in 20 minutes. She made it seem manageable, breaking down the overwhelming into small, achievable tasks. When chemotherapy started, I lost my hair in chunks. I'd find strands on my pillow each morning, evidence of my body's betrayal. The day it became too patchy to hide, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, scissors in hand, paralyzed. Let me, Ava said softly from the doorway. She cut what remained with gentle precision, her fingers tender against my scalp. When she finished, I looked like a stranger. A sick stranger. You're still beautiful, she whispered, pressing a kiss to the top of my bare head. I look like a cancer patient. You look like a warrior. She took me shopping for scarves and showed me how to tie them in elegant ways that made me feel less like a victim. We found soft cotton caps for sleeping and lightweight wigs for professional appearances. You don't have to hide, she said as I adjusted a auburn wig in the boutique mirror. But if it makes you feel more confident, then we do whatever it takes. Between treatment cycles, when I had energy, we worked on what Ava called our living fully list. Simple things, watching sunrises, trying new restaurants, visiting art museums. She made every ordinary moment feel precious. One evening in wine country, we stayed at a small bed and breakfast surrounded by vineyards. The owners had set up speakers on the patio, playing soft jazz under a canopy of stars. Dance with me, Ava said, extending her hand. I'm bald and wearing a hospital bracelet, I protested. Not exactly dancing attire. You're wearing that blue dress that makes your eyes sparkle, and you're here with me. That's all that matters. We swayed together on the stone patio, her arms around my waist, my head resting against her shoulder. The music was soft and romantic, the night air cool against my bare scalp. Thank you, I whispered. For what? For not running when things got hard. For choosing to stay. She pulled back to look at me, moonlight highlighting the gold in her hair. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. When she kissed me under those stars, it tasted like hope and determination. Like promises we were both ready to keep. Back home, the support groups Dr. Martinez recommended became part of our routine. Sitting in circles with other patients, I watched Ava listen to stories of loss and fear with the same attention she gave everything else in her life. How do you stay so positive? another partner asked her one evening. I focus on what we have, not what we might lose, she replied, squeezing my hand. Every good day is a gift. Her optimism wasn't naive. She cried sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking. But she never let her fear overshadow her love, and that strength became mine too. The third round of chemotherapy knocked me flat. My voice, always my strength, became raspy and unreliable. Recording sessions, that once took an hour, now stretched into frustrating marathons of retakes and vocal rest. Maybe I should cancel the audiobook contract, I told Ava one morning, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and my skin looked pale and thin. Absolutely not. She appeared behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. We'll figure out a different approach. She convinced me to set up a small recording space in the bedroom, complete with blankets for sound dampening and a comfortable chair. Instead of long sessions, I worked in 15-minute intervals, my voice stronger in the mornings. Listen to this, she said one afternoon, playing back a section I'd recorded. Your voice has a different quality now. More vulnerable, more real, it's beautiful. She was right. The treatment had stripped away some of my polished professionalism, leaving something raw and more honest. The audiobook's love story felt more authentic when read by someone who truly understood the fragility of happiness. The support group meetings became a cornerstone of our week. Dr. Sarah, the group facilitator, encouraged us to talk about identity and change. How has this experience affected how you see yourself? She asked during one session. I'm learning that I'm braver than I thought, I said, looking around the circle. 6 months ago, I was terrified of admitting I could love a woman. Now that seems insignificant compared to everything else. Ava squeezed my hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. After the meeting, we drove to our favorite overlook in the hills above Riverside. The city sparkled below us, a tapestry of lights and possibilities. I'm proud of you, Ava said, leaning against the car hood beside me. For what? Getting sick? For being honest about who you are? For fighting? For letting me love you? The conversation shifted something between us. We'd been careful with each other since my diagnosis, treating our relationship like fragile glass. But sitting there under the stars, I realized I was tired of being careful. Take me home, I said, my voice carrying an invitation she understood immediately. That night, we made love with a desperation and tenderness that surprised us both. She worshipped my changed body with gentle hands and whispered reassurances, showing me that desire doesn't disappear in the face of illness. We held each other afterward, skin warm against skin, talking about dreams and fears and the strange gift cancer had given us, the knowledge that every moment mattered. I love you, I said into the darkness, the words easier than they'd ever been. I love you too, she replied, her fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. Whatever happens, that won't change. 2 weeks later, I had my best blood work results since diagnosis. Dr. Martinez smiled as she delivered the news, and I saw hope flicker in her professional demeanor. The tumor markers are dropping significantly, she said. This is exactly what we want to see. Ava cried in the parking lot. Years of accumulated fear finally finding release. I held her against my chest, both of us laughing and sobbing at the same time. That evening, she surprised me with dinner at the restaurant where we'd had our first official date. The same table, the same wine, but everything different. I have something for you, she said, pulling out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. Ava. It's not what you think. She opened it to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant. It's a compass. So you always know which direction leads home. And where's home? She reached across the table to take my hand. Wherever we are together. The necklace felt warm against my healing skin, a reminder that some things survive even the worst storms. As we walked out of the restaurant, her arm linked through mine, I realized I'd never felt more like myself than I did in that moment. 6 months later, Dr. Martinez delivered the words I'd been afraid to hope for, remission. Complete remission. The blood work showed no trace of cancer markers. The latest scan revealed healthy tissue where tumors had once threatened my future. I sat in that familiar office chair, holding Ava's hand, trying to process what felt like a miraculous reprieve. "What does this mean, practically?" Ava asked, ever the organizer. "Regular monitoring, of course. Blood work every 3 months initially, then extending to twice yearly. But Charlotte, this is the outcome we've been working toward." Walking out of the medical building felt surreal. The same parking lot, the same cars, but I was a different person than the terrified woman who'd first received her diagnosis. "We did it," Ava whispered, pulling me into her arms right there in the sunshine. We did. That night, we celebrated with takeout Chinese food and cheap champagne, sitting on my living room floor like teenagers. Everything felt possible again. Within weeks, Ava made a decision that shocked me. "I'm selling the shop," she announced over breakfast. "What? Why? You love that place." "I love you more." She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. "I want to manage your career full-time. You're getting more voice work than you can handle, and I'm good with business logistics." It was true. Word had spread about my audiobook work, leading to offers for commercial campaigns and documentary narration. My voice, changed by treatment, but somehow richer for the experience, was in demand. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure anything." The transition happened smoothly. Ava sold Bennett Antiques to a young couple who promised to maintain its character. She moved her remaining inventory to storage and set up an office in my spare room. "Foster Bennett Talent Management," she said, showing me the business cards she'd had printed. "Has a nice ring, don't you think?" Seeing our names linked professionally felt like another step toward the life we were building together. My first major project under her management was a documentary about women who'd found love later in life. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Listen to this section," I said, playing back the recording where I narrated a story about 2 women in their 60s who met at a grief counseling group. "Your voice carries so much understanding now," Ava observed. "You're not just reading their story. You're honoring it." The project led to other meaningful work: campaigns for cancer awareness, LGBTQIA resource centers, women's health initiatives. My career had found new purpose beyond commercial success. One evening, as we reviewed contracts at the kitchen table, Ava looked up from her laptop. "I have an idea for a special project." "What kind of project?" "A podcast. About your journey. Not just the cancer, but everything. Coming out at 50, finding love, redefining yourself." The suggestion terrified and excited me. "You think people would want to hear that?" "I think there are a lot of women out there who need to hear it. Who need to know it's never too late to become who you're meant to be." We worked on the proposal together, crafting episodes that would weave together my personal story with interviews from other women who'd navigated similar journeys. Ava handled the technical aspects, while I focused on content and guest outreach. The night we finished the pilot episode, we sat in my recording booth listening to my voice tell our story. Hearing it played back, I realized how far we'd both traveled from that afternoon at the ice cream shop. "Any regrets?" Ava asked, as the recording ended. "About what?" "Taking so long to figure yourself out, wasting all those years." I considered the question seriously. The Charlotte who'd married David, who'd lived a conventional life for 5 decades, felt like a different person. But without that foundation, would I have appreciated the joy of discovering my authentic self? "No regrets," I said finally. "Everything led me to you." She leaned over to kiss me, soft and sure, and everything led me to you. The compass necklace she'd given me caught the light as I moved. Its small weight a constant reminder that home wasn't a place but a person. As we left the studio that night, her hand in mine, I felt the deep satisfaction of a life finally lived fully. 1 year later, I stood in our backyard under an arch of white roses, wearing a cream silk dress that complemented my newly grown silver hair. The intimate gathering included Janet from the radio station, Dr. Martinez, who'd become a friend beyond her professional role, and several couples from our support group who'd watched our love story unfold. Ava looked radiant in a flowing blue dress that matched her eyes, the same color she'd worn to our first official dinner date. She'd designed the ceremony herself, incorporating readings from the poetry books we'd discovered together and music from that night we danced under the stars. Today isn't about legal recognition, I said, reading from notes I'd written but hardly needed. It's about choosing each other, again and publicly, with full knowledge of what that choice means. Her vows brought tears to everyone's eyes, including mine. She spoke about courage and timing, about learning that love doesn't follow schedules or societal expectations. You taught me that it's never too late to rewrite your story, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion. And I promise to spend every day helping you write the most beautiful chapters yet. When we kissed to seal our commitment, it tasted like everything we'd overcome and everything we still had to discover together. The podcast had launched 3 months earlier to overwhelming response. Late bloomers featured women from diverse backgrounds who'd found their authentic selves in midlife or beyond. The episode about our relationship generated thousands of messages from listeners who saw their own struggles reflected in our story. "You saved my marriage," one woman wrote. "Hearing about your journey gave me courage to tell my husband about my attraction to women. We're in counseling now, working toward an amicable separation so I can finally be honest about who I am. Dr. Martinez had declared me officially cancer-free at my 6-month checkup." The fear still lived in the back of my mind, probably always would, but it no longer controlled my decisions. If anything, the experience had taught me to embrace uncertainty rather than fight it. My voice work had evolved into something deeper than entertainment. The documentary about late-in-life love stories won a regional Emmy, leading to opportunities with national networks. Ava managed every detail with precision and love, building our business into something neither of us could have imagined alone. As the evening wound down and our guests departed with hugs and promises to visit soon, Ava and I found ourselves alone in the garden. Solar lights twinkled in the gathering dusk, and somewhere a neighbor was playing jazz softly enough to drift over the fence. "Dance with me," she said, extending her hand exactly as she had that night in wine country. "Always," I replied, stepping into her arms. We swayed together on the stone patio, my head resting against her shoulder, both of us humming along to the distant music. The same song from that magical evening when everything still felt fragile and uncertain. "Any regrets?" she asked, echoing the question from months earlier. "Just one," I said, pulling back to look at her face in the soft light. Her expression flickered with concern. "What?" "That we didn't meet sooner." She laughed, the sound rich with joy and relief. "We met exactly when we were supposed to. Any earlier and we wouldn't have been ready for this." She was right, of course. The Charlotte who'd stumbled through that ice cream encounter had been ripe for transformation but still afraid of her own desires. The Ava who'd pursued me with gentle persistence had needed time to develop the patience and wisdom that made her love so extraordinary. "I love you, Mrs. Foster Bennett," I whispered against her lips. "I love you too, Mrs. Foster Bennett." As we kissed under the stars, surrounded by the home we'd built together, I felt the complete satisfaction of a life lived authentically. The compass around my neck caught the light, its small weight a reminder that some journeys are worth every detour along the way.